Welcome, Kunal. Welcome, and thank you for doing this. So, for the audience, we are doing this Spark webinar where we kind of have the stalwarts of the industry come and talk to us with the sole intention and kind of inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs. As we move into the next, as we are the youngest population in this country. Everyone keeps on telling us again and again and again. The whole world, this country has the youngest population. The only way that we're going to make everyone productive is if we get them to work for themselves. And that is entrepreneurship 101. And we want to learn from people who've done it. So Pramod did it back in the day. He's kind of been really, really good at it. Kunal, you've built, huge companies, and I'm going to give a proper introduction as well. And we wanted to see if we could somehow use your experience to inspire the next generation of our entrepreneurs. So Kunal Bahl is a technology entrepreneur and investor. He's a co-founder of the Ace Vector Group, which is the holding company for Snapdeal, Unicommerce, and the Stellario brands. He's an active participant in India's startup ecosystem and a prolific technology investor. Now, what's important to understand, he's invested in more than 250 startups across various sectors through Titan Capital, which is his thing in consumer tech, health tech, fintech, SaaS, consumer brands, B2B services in companies like Ola, the UC, which is the urban company, Razorpay, Shadowfax, Vira Beer, Beardo, which I use a lot, by the way, Kata Book, Mama Earth, among others. He's an influential voice on issues pertaining to Indian startups and entrepreneurships. And that's why today is an important day. He's a member of the Executive Council at NASSCOM, a member of the National Startup Advisory Council, and an elected member of the Board of Governors of the Indian Council of Research on Economic Relations, which is ICRIER. Kunal is an ex-chair at the CII E-Commerce Committee. He is also an independent director of the Board of Pyramid Enterprise Technologies. He's graduated from the Jerome Fisher Program in Management Technology at UPenn, and he holds degrees in engineering and business from the Wharton School, which most of us know about. Thank you, Kunal. Thanks for coming and doing this.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for the introduction, very warm introduction.
Kunal, thank you for being here. We're also, I've known Kunal for a long time, watched his wonderful journey back and forth, watched the ideas come up, and thank you for speaking to us. This is such an important mission for us, for Punjab, for the young entrepreneurs that we are trying to grow out of Punjab. As you know, Kunal, one of the things that is remarkable about Punjab is in terms of food, music, media, Bollywood, armed forces. We're a small state which always consistently fights well above its weight level, and has a deep influence across India. It doesn't matter where you go. And it doesn't matter where you go in the world, you will find Punjabis making mozzarella cheese in Italy, to running garages everywhere else, to being the best entrepreneurs in the world. And yet the tragedy is that actually a lot of the best entrepreneurs gonna leave Punjab. They come from Punjab, but they leave. They go elsewhere. They go to Bangalore, they go to Gurugram, they go to Silicon Valley. And our aim as part of this mission is to bring the expertise that they are looking for to their doorsteps in places like Chandigarh and Mohali and Ludhiana and Amritsar and Patiala and everywhere else. And I think that's part of this journey and the Spark event that we have created, where we are absolutely delighted to have you. So I'll kick off, Kunal. If
Really appreciate the really warm welcome, and as a fellow Punjabi, I'm quite thrilled to be here and provide my support in whatever small way I can to the cause of growing entrepreneurship within Punjab.
Well, thank you, Kunal. I know you have a boatload on your plate at any point in time as you're going through your journey. So we really appreciate your time. Kunal, I'll start perhaps just by asking you about the very beginning. And we'll talk about, what it takes to be an entrepreneur, some advice to the young startups that we have, lots of people on the call listening in, and advice to what do you think is different? What do they need to do to succeed? But I think your own story is remarkable, right? As you said, you started your business venture. You joined Microsoft, I think, in the US for a while and left them and came back, and then...
Well, I didn't technically leave them. I was made, I shouldn't say they were made to leave. They applied for my H-1B visa. I joined Microsoft right out of college, and they applied for my H-1B visa, which got rejected by the US.
I don't believe it.
So I was actually not left with an option. I had to return to India, and Microsoft was nice about it. They said you can join Microsoft India for a year and we'll apply again next year. I was like, look, if I'm going back to my country, I might as well start a company, which is what I would have done anyways had I lived on in the US. So I think everything happens for a reason. You're a big believer in serendipity, and this is obviously one great example of serendipity playing out quite nicely.
Yes, well, it was our gain and Microsoft's loss in the US, I think. But where did the entrepreneurship bug get you? Why were you so sure right from the beginning that you would start your own business? How does that happen? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think I feel that so many of like the desire to become an entrepreneur is very much in the Punjabi blood, I feel. I think it comes very naturally to us Punjabis because we see it around us. Even if our parents are not in business, we'll have uncles or aunts or cousins or friends, neighbors who would be running businesses, and that tends to inspire those who want to be inspired to start a business. And I was fortunate that while everyone in my family prior to my father's generation, they were all in various government defense services or government civil services, but my father is an entrepreneur, very classic Punjabi, manufacturing entrepreneur, son of the soil, really did everything from scratch in pre-liberalization India. So really saw him growing up, work super hard, would barely see him 6 days of the week. We would mostly see him on a Sunday, but also and he did it for our family. And he really wanted to change the orbit of our family through his hard work and potential success. And I saw the impact that a business person can create for his family, his or her family, and the people around them and their employees, etc. So somewhere, business was always something that we discussed or saw, maybe not discussed, but at least saw in the house. It was not an alien concept. And so when I returned back from the US, it wasn't really a conversation that I'm actually not going to take up a job, even though I'd gone to a good college and probably could get a decent job in India. But it wasn't even a conversation that we had in the family. I was all of 23 when I came back. And you would imagine at 23, parents still feel they have some, at least back when I was 23, parents at least felt that, they still have a role to play in their child's career. And so, but it was never even one, I don't think we spent a minute talking about that I'm going to start a business as compared to, take up a job. And I think that goes, so I would give a lot of credit to those choices, the risky choices to my parents, where they were very encouraging. I'm sure my mom at times did feel that I should take a safe bet because getting me married off may have been easier for them. But I don't think they never expressed any of those reservations to me at that point in time. So which was very encouraging for me to take the plunge and just go 100% risk on this.
Yes, it is, Kunal, because for a large part, and you have a large audience now, over I'm just checking, you've got over 80, you got 85 people listening in, so you got a really great audience here. For many people, it is a risky bet, right? Their view on life, India generally tends to be conservative, not be big risk takers. How should they cope with it today, particularly when the circumstances have changed significantly versus when you were trying to be a startup?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it's interesting you use the word startup because when I was starting up, there was nothing known as a startup,
That's
right?
right.
Was you did a job or you did a business, right? And generally, those who did a business were those who didn't get a job, right? Or didn't get a good enough job or a well-paying enough job. And so there was always this impression that people who were starting businesses suffered from adverse selection, where because they didn't get a good job or didn't get a job at all, that's why they're starting a company. Things have changed dramatically, to say the least, in the last 15 years. I remember when I had started along with my co-founder, who also happens to be from Punjab. He actually grew up in Punjab in a small town called Malot and near Batinda, and we it was a struggle back then. Just telling people, why do two guys, one who went to Wharton, one who went to IIT,
That's
uh,
right.
are not like doing nice jobs or going abroad. And I don't think it bothered us that much because we were so purposeful about what we were doing. We were so missionary about what we were doing. That said, it was a struggle, like raising capital. Now, not a day passes, you see companies getting funded, like many companies getting funded every single day. I remember we went to some angel investor back then who was introduced to us. He was some real estate business person. He heard us out. He was like smiling and he was very engaged. And we thought, wow, ye to paise denge, right? And by the end of the meeting, like he was all exuberant that you guys, I really like you guys. I really want to back you. So I'll give you 50 lakh rupees. You give me 60% of the company. Right? So, so that was the era in which we started, where it was literally like literal Shark Tank, right? Like people were actually sharks. I mean, now they are truly angels, relatively speaking. So, but we've gone through a dramatic shift over the last 15 years, and I would say that now is probably the most opportune time, or as opportune a time that one would have seen compared to history, for starting a business. Capital is easily available. When we started, there were less than 10 million internet users in India 15 years ago. 10 million. Now we have close to 1 billion internet users in India. The TAM, the addressable market has grown multi-fold.
Yes.
We are only limited as founders by our creativity, by our hard work, by our passion, by our ability to keep going, not by the market size or the connectivity or smartphone. We used to talk about the type of things we used to talk about. Oh, when will India have 50 million internet users? Or when will smartphones go below 10,000 rupees? Right? Like these were the things we used to debate, like as though it'll happen like after 10, 20 years. But we should be so grateful as aspiring entrepreneurs and operating entrepreneurs that we live in the India of now, because these opportunities are just absolutely golden. And
Yes.
I would say at least 100x easier to start up a business, get a business funded, grow a business, build a large company, get acquired or go public, do all kinds of things. You have so many degrees of freedom and growth available to startups, which none of which were there 10, 15 years ago.
Yes. So let me pick that up because that is a huge point that we are also making. And in fact, we are going to absolutely take you and your co-founder up on Punjab because, what we want our people in Punjab to do is that also to recognize you don't have to go anywhere. Money will come to you. There's so much money available in this world now. It will come to you if you have a good idea. But Kunal, let me go back to talking about your idea because a lot of entrepreneurs we meet, a lot of startups we meet, and we had this big event with the chief minister 2 days ago, which was wonderful and went down extremely well. We have 16 startups in our accelerator. And a lot of people ask questions, but how do you stay with your idea? How do you know? How can you have the stamina to stay with an idea? So talk about that because, when you're starting an e-commerce business, firstly, was it an e-commerce business always that you wanted to start? Secondly, where did you get the conviction that you could do with only 10 million internet users, that this was a viable idea that would stay the course? So talk about that because that takes a lot of guts, I think, to be able to follow that up. I wanted to relate one anecdote though. And I am like, you're talking to startups and saying you're 15 years ahead of them. I'm 15 years before you as well. So I have many, like, but I remember when we spun off Genpact from GE Capital, and into a public company, into an independent company, etc. My mother called me up and said, is something wrong, beta? Why are you leaving GE Capital? How could you do such a thing? What? And eventually, when I told him I wanted to be an entrepreneur, she quietly turned to me and said, beta, it's okay. You can tell me, did you get fired by GE Capital? Is that why you're doing this? So talk about that. But go back to your idea, and then I'll take it forward to all the ups and downs. One of the things which I love that I've heard you say is how success and failure is a part of life. And we have to, it'll move sideways, forwards, all sorts of ways. So please talk to us about that.
Sure. So, it's very hard. As founders, we can only gaze into a crystal ball and hope for a future that we desire, that it actually does happen. But that shouldn't, discourage us from, even if it doesn't happen as fast, the future doesn't come as fast as we like, or doesn't happen as per our desires. It's okay. The key is to have the courage to continue. At no point in our journey, like any founder, everyone thinks that a successful founder's journey is like a straight line up. It's actually like this, it's somewhere like a zigzag and up and down and twisty, turny. And also the era that we live in. And by the way, at least having spoken with many very successful, seasoned entrepreneurs, such as yourselves and others, I've seen that this has always been the case. Even in a pre-tech era, it's always been the case. It's just that in today's day and age, where there is so much media coverage of everything, and founders are celebrated, companies are celebrated, taken up, taken down, we just get to hear about it more now than we did earlier. It has happened with every successful founder, any founder, successful or even for those where things didn't work out. So this is first thing that a founder should know, is that the twists and turns are going to be there. It's unheard of having a straight line journey. So one should have the courage that it's going to happen the twists and turns will happen to me also, they happen to others also. And if I have the courage to continue, I will be able to get past it. At no point in our journey did we ever think failure was an option. We never thought like that. The thought even didn't occur to us that, what we are doing is not working, so let's just shut shop and go.
But Kunal, let me, if I may, just forgive me for interrupting, but this is such an important point, and one of the things I talk to everybody about that holds people back is fear of failure. So where does that come from also? Where does it come from to you to have no fear of failure? Or even if you do have fear of failure, how do you deal with it? And I think this is something many young entrepreneurs worry about.
Yeah, I keep telling people, have asked me this many times, because I think we've demonstrated to you through the years. And at least I often say that it's probably because I have some kind of manufacturing defect that I just don't know how to give up. But I think, jokes apart, I do feel having a very, very good co-founder with whom you have a very strong, trustworthy, trusting, and a relationship of mutual respect and mutual, of desire and passion and hard work. Having that is probably the number one most important thing, because everyone is human. Like all these great entrepreneurs we all look up to, they've all had their low moments, right? Everyone is human. And at that point in time, at that moment, you need someone who understands your situation as well as you understand your situation. And sometimes that's not even a spouse or a parent, right? Because they just don't have all the context of things you're dealing with. And having Rohit by my side and vice versa over the last decade and a half in our entrepreneurial journey has been such a joy and such a privilege, and a blessing, because on my low days he would be there to pick us up and say, let's keep going, let's see, let this day pass, let the day win over us, tomorrow is another new day, right? And on his low days I would be there for him. I think the second thing is, again, while co-founder is very important, so is family. Right? I had a group of students who were traveling from, I think, Harvard or Wharton, visit our office pre-COVID. And one of the things that they mentioned, they asked me is like, what is that one learning that you really want to leave us with? So I
Right.
reflected on it for a few minutes, and I said that, look, with any amount of success, small or large, in your life, whether as a professional or as a uh, founder or an investor or any kind of business or work you are in, never let your personal lifestyle move up in step with your financial success, because that is so important, given there will be some shocks along the way. Things will not go as per plan, and you need that buffer between your current financial capabilities and your lifestyle. So, like, whenever I've had shocks, professional shocks in my life, it has had no effect on our family. And because we've never let our lifestyle get ahead of ourselves. And this holds true at any stage of someone's success, either a professional or a founder or entrepreneur. And then I feel that having a fantastic team really makes things easier, because if you have a great team, even if it is just two people in the company or 20 or 200 or 2000, if you have a great team around you, your ability to weather storms becomes a lot better. You have a diversity of ideas, you have more arms and legs to get around a tough situation. Everyone celebrates entrepreneurs, but it's actually, they are just the face. In the end, most of the work, most of the burden is being carried by the extended team. So there is no one answer, but at least the answer for me has been great co-founder, having a very disciplined personal lifestyle, and obviously support from the family in times when that are tough. And finally, just having a fantastic loyal team that sticks by you through the
Yes.
through the campaign.
Kunal, again, I'm going to pick up on this. As a lesson for startups, so many of us tend to want to do everything ourselves, tend to want to get into everything ourselves, get it done, get it solved. It's a wonderful discussion I have with Somveer and everybody else also in IMPunjab. And so I'm sure Somveer, I can't see him right now, but I'm sure he's smiling away, because we have a tendency of, okay, let's do it, as opposed to recognizing that perhaps you're better with other people supporting you, with the help of everybody else, with the help of the team coming together, and a team that is really diverse and different and brings different assets. So as you went through, will you talk a little bit about what were the toughest things for you to get done, especially in the early days? You've talked about hiring challenges and how nobody would join you. Well, if you were working from a garage in basement from Mansarovar Gardens, I can imagine nobody wanting to join you. Talk about that, please.
Yeah,
We love
I
it.
think hiring is a big challenge. I think it's been a perennial challenge for every type of business, not just technology businesses. I think in India, we live in a society where the social security net doesn't exist, right? So people are understandably very concerned about the employer they join, given if things were not to work out, when people fall, they fall really hard. And it's not like there's some net to protect them financially, their families, etc. They need to put food on the table for their families. So I do understand. I mean, back then, we were literally working out of the basement of home, a lawyer's home in the furniture market in Kirti Nagar in Delhi, Mansoor Garden. And it was tough to attract people because they were like, what is this? This is not even an office. There's no board. There's one toilet in the whole office. Like, everyone has to use the same one. The drawing room is the conference room, right? The bedroom is the meeting room, right? So like it was unheard of, right? Like, at least as tech guys, we had heard of HP and Google and whatnot. So for us, it was normal. But for someone who worked in ICICI Bank or Tata AIG, like, for them it was like, why would I want to work here? Right? Like, this seems doesn't seem like a company. It seems like some fly by night operation. But I think to the point you were making about the team, I feel that, and to the point of the challenges of the early days, the hiring is obviously a big challenge. However, eventually you work through it, you will hire good people, right? You just have to, the conversion ratio is lower. So you have
Yes.
to meet 100 people to get maybe five good people. As the company becomes more successful, more well-known, the conversion ratio improves. You may have to meet 25 people to hire five people. But it's a labor of love and you just have to go through it. I do feel that the biggest challenge for startups, particularly pertinent to this conversation and the audience today, is the ability to focus in the early days. Because by default, the entrepreneurs are very like always bubbling with ideas and want to try 10 different things and always want to have side projects because they're just passionate individuals. And then they invariably attract early employees who are like them, who are also passionate individuals, bubbling with ideas, want to do 100 different things at the same time. Yeah, and there's a lot of sparring and all that that's going on. But I feel that just focus and discipline in the early days on solving one important problem is the most important thing. And I've seen 9 out of 10 startups struggle with doing that. Like, they'll be like, yeah, what do you do? I do X. But what is this other thing that I see in your presentation or PNL that isn't X, has nothing to do with X, or is remotely tied to X? Like, oh, we're just trying that out because we thought it's an interesting opportunity.
Yeah.
Never works out. Ever, ever, ever. Because there is someone else for them that for whom that small thing is the X. And they're spending 100% of their organizational energy on solving that other side problem. Um, and I feel that the big difference I've seen between companies that have enduring success and growth versus those who have a very meandering journey. There could be other factors also, but largely is lack of focus and discipline on a single large problem statement.
Absolutely. And staying with that idea, as you said, Kunal, right? Staying through thick and thin as you go through that. As you hired people, one of the things I talk to people a lot about is the importance of hiring the right people, getting the right team on the ground. I do a lot of leadership lectures, and actually I ask the audience very often, I say, how often do we get hiring wrong? The answers range like 30 to 50% of the time we get hiring wrong. We hire the wrong person for the wrong job. And that is fatal because it takes you 2 years to move somebody on. And it is actually one of the biggest issues I find, certainly in India, because people are very reluctant to fire somebody, etc., and the tolerance level for inefficiency is really high, which in fact inhibits the company. So how did you do that? What did you look for? And again, your advice to startups, because I think for startups, this is a very important point that as they build their team, it's not whoever is available next door who happened to walk by, but matching skills very carefully and thoughtfully and thinking very carefully about who to hire for what role and how to make sure they're of high quality. Will you talk to us about that, Kunal?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the methodologies we created and have followed till present day, and we've never ever ever deviated from it, is that anyone who we need to hire at a mid to senior level, right? At a junior level, I don't think it matters as much, but at a mid to senior level, where it's also you're not just bringing arms and legs, but you're also bringing some cerebral quotient into the company. What we would typically do is provide that person with a simple case study where we would say that, look, if you were given this job, how would you do these 5 things, right? And you can use any publicly available information about the company, about the industry. We will give you no other information beyond these 5 points, questions that you need to answer. Here's what happens. It's really fascinating. About 50% people don't show up. They don't turn, they just vanish. They just poof, thin air, which is great because those are the 50% you should have not touched with a barge pole.
Right.
Because they either were all talk and actually could not put their cogent set of thoughts on a piece of paper, or they lack the humility to, because many would say, "Arey, मेरे से आपने presentation बनवाने के लिए कैसे बोल दिया?" Right? मैं तो I went to so and so college, right? Or I work at so and so company. आप तो छोटे से startup हो, right? How can you? I am doing you a favor by coming and working for you. But for us, humility has always been a very, very important cultural attribute. So if you don't have the humility to come and to make a presentation, showcase your thoughts, be open to being judged basis that, then we are not the right company for you. And we've seen that the quality of thoughts on the 50% that do come back, about half, more than half, or 70-80% sometimes, when you give people a clean slate to put thoughts on a piece of paper, they just don't have great thoughts. And they are very good at being put in on a path that someone else was already doing this job.
Directions, yes.
Parachute in and they can keep doing it. But in a startup, you need people who can think, who can act, who can pivot, who can change. Like, you need very versatile people and who can think of a completely new set of facts. So this process we followed from day one, and it's really, really helped us in building tremendous cultural homogeneity from a work ethic, intellectual humility standpoint. So, startups in India are always said, they are revolving door. People leave in like 9, 10, 12 months. The median tenure at any of our businesses is over 7 years. Right?
Yes.
Which is, 7 years is longer than most startups survive. And that's the median tenure at which some people stay with us. Because when they've gone through this rigorous process, when they come into the company, they meet others who've gone through the same process. And they realize that, there is a high bar here. Then they don't want to leave because they know in other companies, they will not get this intellectual humility, the homogeneity of intellectual humility across the company.
Yes. The cultural aspect also are incredibly important, aren't they? Right from the beginning, to set that culture, as you said, of humility, of being an entrepreneur. But for all the people listening in, I think the concept of asking people to come up with an answer to a case study is very, very good, because it really shows you who can think out of the box, who can deal with ambiguity, who can come up with issues and designs in a very different area from what they're used to doing. And I think that's a very important point. And Kunal, talk to us a little bit more about business model. I get a lot of questions from startups about, how do I validate my business model? Do I have a good idea? Is my idea working? Or alternatively, a lot of people who start walking down a path without thinking through all the issues around the business model. How will I scale? I have a great idea, but it can, my idea will apply to the 3 cities about 20 kilometers around me, and that's it. So talk about, please tell us what you think about, how do you validate a business model? How do you think of a business model? How do you think about scaling? How do you think about validating it?
Yeah, I think there is no, as you know, right? I know this is a open-ended question, but the answer is that there is no answer to this, right? But there are attempts, but there are no answers. And I feel that a framework that one could use is that can work or has worked for me is finding the smallest kernel of an idea to work on, right? I actually feel it's great if I find an idea that I feel only works in one city for now, right? I think it's completely okay to start with ideas that don't scale. Even a bit more people at the problem. You don't have to use like AI on day one. It's okay if you don't know how will this business grow outside of one city or outside of the first 10 clients. But the key is to find the smallest kernel that actually works, right? Creating a product or a service that absolutely delights a small set of users, a small set of customers. Because then the kernel works. Then there is some amount of product market fit. Then post that, growing the business is actually the easy part, relatively. Finding product market fit for a novel product or a novel service is actually the hard part, because that requires some degree of inventiveness. that requires a lot of iteration, a lot of test and learn, a lot of failures, small and big, to get to something that people find delightful, valuable, and willing to pay money so that you can also make some margin while covering your costs. And oftentimes we've seen in our ecosystem that companies try and because of self-induced pressures of founders and their teams or pressures induced by investors, expectations of investors or expectations of the market, companies try to scale before they actually hit product market fit, right? Product market fit being, are you delighting your customers? And at the same time, are you able to make a healthy margin? Just delighting is not enough. I think that's something that is often only written in startup literature. What is also important in addition to delighting is actually making money, or at least at a unit economics level. Maybe you're not yet covering your fixed cost, but at a unit level of the service or a product, it's so critical to make money so that as you grow the business, then you'll generate enough margin to pay for your fixed cost. Versus if the unit economics are negative, then as you grow, the loss will only expand. And that these are hard lessons that we seem to have learned as an ecosystem, but we're still on the path of truly internalizing those learnings.
Yes.
The true definition of product market fit, in my view, is delight plus margin, unit economics, and one should find the smallest possible kernel of success. Not this and new idea, new product, new service doesn't need to work for 1,000 companies or 1,000,000 customers on day one. It just doesn't need to. It needs to work for 100 people or 10 companies, and that's good enough to have conviction that now I need to grow this.
Yes. So as you think this through, I mean, there were many instances in the past, of course, Kunal, as you know, in your industry, many other industries, where people were making lots of ongoing losses and still going forward and being funded very well, etc. How did you respond to some of that? Obviously, unit economics is the test, as you said, and product market fit. But there were many instances which do sway startups to start thinking about, and by the way, it sways the rest of industry also, who are all saying, I mean, I wish at Genpact I could have made losses for 5 years. I would have blown that company up to 10 times its size. But obviously, that equation has changed. But what is important, because you don't want to get seduced by that either, right? You don't want to get seduced. You don't want to get seduced by the fact that if you have a great idea and you can go out and that's enough. You have to actually know where your profits are going to come from. Will you talk about that a little bit and those views?
Yeah, I think maybe it's good to take a step back and first ask a more fundamental question, like why do startups make losses? Why is this a norm? Which I think it's understood to be a norm now, that all startups are loss making, and to take it one step forward, they are perpetually loss making, right? And look, that the facts are in sync with that opinion as of today. So I don't blame anyone carrying that opinion either. See, if you were to take a step back, why are they loss making in the beginning? The reason they're loss making in the beginning is, one, the business is not large enough to generate enough unit economics basis the product or service that is being sold to cover the fixed costs of the business. However, the expectation is that the unit economics are decent enough that as the business grows in scale, the absolute amount of unit economics rupees that it will generate will pay for the fixed costs of the business. Now, and until then, some losses will be incurred, which investors, early stage investors, venture capitalists, seed investors, angel investors, essentially fund those losses. Now, this was the norm in the US, Silicon Valley, which is where all the startup revolution started 30, 40 years ago. Over a period of time, what has happened is, with the abundance of capital that has come into technology because of the mega returns people generated on the Apples and the Googles and the Amazons, there is a deluge of capital. And now, to meet the desire of returns on this deluge of capital, there is a push from investors to grow businesses larger, faster, right? And in the desire to grow businesses larger, faster, or these startups into larger businesses faster, there is an abundant, like over-capitalization that happens. So the one assumption that was made about the startup model, which is the positive unit economics, has started getting violated, where on negative unit economics, businesses are being grown very fast. Now, I do understand the compulsions of founders, and I've been in that position where I've also been subject to similar pressures and compulsions, and I have also at times given in to those, right? Because at some level, for a founder, if you're being rewarded to do a certain action, you'd be like, I'll do it, right? Like it gives me more resources, more capital to achieve my dreams of building an even bigger business. But what you don't realize is that the moment the music stops, all you have is a cash hemorrhaging business, a massively loss-making business with broken unit economics, and you don't know at what scale can this business ever become profitable. And I think that creates a lot of dissonance then in the company and amongst the investors of businesses. So at least from my own learnings as a founder, as well as having invested and mentored so many founders through the years, I've seen, I would say, just focus on one idea and focus on unit economics not being violated. In the early days, first 6 months, 9 months, one understands that unit economics are still a bit vacillating, but one should have a very clear view. Like when I meet founders, many times I'll hear, oh, today I'm a 10% margin business, but I'll become a 50% margin business, right? I tell them, I believe you, but the only thing is, it will be a different business where you are a 50% margin business. You can't go from a 10% margin business to a 50% margin business and still claim that you're in the same business. Right. So you have to decide, are you a squirrel with a tail or an elephant with a trunk? Right.
Yes.
And so at least my counsel to all founders is that unit economics have to be sacrosanct, right? That you have to be the guardian, the protector of the unit economics, because your employees, your investors will pressure you to grow faster at the cost of unit economics. But
yes,
just never give in to it.
Yes, but tell me, as you were, you've gone through your share of ups and downs, Kunal. Some of the questions that have been asked here are about success and failure. There's a couple of questions. How do you handle it? And yet you've changed, you've turned around. I also was going through, you've got every accolade, every award earlier. You've also got the comeback award, etc. I mean, these are very difficult things that I've never been through, by the way. I mean, I've run bad businesses, don't get me wrong. I've run businesses at G Capital which didn't work out, but I had a backstop, right? And for you, it must have been tough. So talk a little bit about that if you can, because to me, that's probably one of the best learnings anybody could hope to get.
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think I would attribute it to the manufacturing defect, because I tend to, almost to a sociopathic degree, not really think too much about the past. I'm usually spending 100% of my time thinking about the present and the future. Right? It's only in such conversation when someone asks, oh, you went through a lot and you had a really, interesting, people use euphemisms also sometimes, right? So, but, you learn from your experiences, you internalize those learnings, they're part of your bloodstream, they're part of your being now, and you are applying those learnings every day, but you don't have to wake up in the morning and keep thinking about them all the time, because that pulls you down. That reduces your energy, that makes you, wallow in your, that, oh, things could have gone this way or that way. I think that just putting one foot ahead of the other every single day.
Yes.
Even if yesterday was bad and the day before was terrible and the day before that was absolutely atrocious, just I always think, just keep putting one foot ahead of the other, and you'll quickly transition from this really dark, dingy place into this bright, lovely environment. But many people just paralyze. They lose the courage to continue. And it's in that when you are at the bottom of the abyss, having that courage to continue is all that it takes. You just have to keep going, and you realize slowly, inch by inch, centimeter by centimeter, you come out of the hole. I don't think there is any formula for dealing with adversity. I don't think there is any special power anyone has. I feel it just, like I mentioned earlier, having a supportive co-founder or a business partner, having great support from your family, and knowing where your strength comes from as a human being, as an individual. For some people, it's religion. For different people, it's different things. I know where it is for me, and everyone needs to find that for themselves. But then thereafter, it's all about just putting one foot ahead of the other. And you always, I have never seen anyone who has the courage to continue not come out of a hole that they are in. Now, obviously, it's very important to not do wrong things also. So many times in business, things don't work out because the market changes, it becomes very competitive, the environment is not conducive. It could be for a variety of reasons that are out of your control. But I recently I gave an interview, and the journalist asked me that, what do you really care about? And I just say, look, I only care about three things: health, family, and freedom. And so none of it takes a lot of money. Like health, you just exercise a little bit every day and you eat healthy, you're fine. Family, they just need your time. They don't need anything from you. And freedom, just don't do anything wrong.
Yes.
And if you have these three things with you, well, you can overcome any adversity.
Yes. But if I may, Kunal, I think it's very gutsy and very courageous what you're saying, and not everybody has that kind of courage behind them, to be honest. Or as you said, the manufacturing defect, it isn't there everywhere, right? So you were suddenly confronted with a very different market, with a very different competitors, with your own business not perhaps doing as well. How did you change? How did you actually change your business model? What all have you changed at this point in time, which allowed you to do that comeback? Because that's, as you said, where you didn't freeze, right? You got up in the morning and you said, I'm going to tackle this. I'm going to find my way through.
Yeah, I think it's not, you have to have strong opinions, but held loosely, right? Because strong opinions held strongly is just stubbornness.
Stubbornness,
Right?
yes. Yes.
And I think as founders, we are very passionate about the idea we are pursuing, the purpose. It gives us our life purpose, right? That with what we are pursuing. But you have to read the tea leaves of the changing market around you, right? Sometimes some markets just become irrationally competitive. And when they become irrationally competitive, you can either say, okay, I'm going to go on a suicide mission now, right? I'll keep fighting this fight because I don't know any other battle that I know that I want to fight, and I'll fight till death, right? I don't think you need to do that. I think the goal of entrepreneurship is to build value, build something of consequence, create employment, create impact, right? And if it means that you have to evolve your approach, change your business model, go after a smaller market or a different market, it's totally okay.
Yes.
And one doesn't need to be so beholden to that original idea. I mean, most people don't realize when we started, we were a coupon book magazine and nothing to do with e-commerce. And we started as a physical magazine, right? And today we power software for 10,000 brands through Unicommerce. We have millions of customers on Snapdeal. Like, it has nothing to do with what we started. Now, had we continued to be stubborn about we are a coupon book magazine, we will always be a coupon book magazine, come what may. Even if nobody wants it, we will keep running this business only, right? So then we would be running that today, right? And I won't be here talking to you today. So I feel having strong opinions is great, but being open to change and evolving your opinion and your thought process with changing facts is also very important for founders, right?
Right.
In the end,
Yeah.
building successful business is the purpose, right? It's not an ego battle that I have to make my original idea successful. Nobody cares, right? In the end, people care about, did you build a successful business or not? Did you create impact on society, for your family, for your employees or not? And if it's a different idea versus the one you started on, more power to you. It shows that you're a very versatile person who's open to changing his views.
And in fact, more and more people look to hire people who have demonstrated that ability, right? To change, to bounce out, to fail, to do all of that. Kunal, it's amazing. It's 12:52 already. I can't believe it. We could go on for 84 hours. But I'm going to pick up on some question and answers, if you don't mind, which have been posted here. I think one of the questions was how to handle success and failure. I think you've talked quite a lot about that, right? There's another question which is intriguing, and I'd love to hear your answer. It says, my question is it okay to continue with a business which is going on continuous losses for more than 5 years? Or are there suggestions to come out of losses in services sector industry? Let me leave that with you and see what you have to say to that. And I have a few others after that,
See, I think firstly, I think if a business is going through losses, first and foremost, the only way it can continue is if you have some ongoing source of funds, either your own or from some investor. I think that's the first question one should ask. Because a business can't continue if there is no source of funds. But let's assume for a second that there is a source of funds. All losses are not made equal. The same way all revenue is not made equal. There is good quality revenue and there is bad quality revenue. The same way there is, I won't say good quality losses and bad quality losses, but some losses which are true, like intellectually honest investment into the future, where you're acquiring high quality customers and you've paid some acquisition cost for them, but you have a very predictable pathway to recovering that initial investment and then profiting from those customers' ongoing relationship with you. That I feel is still a good quality loss, relatively speaking. Right? I would say not a loss, it's an investment you're making.
Right.
The loss on losing, let's say for instance, you're selling a 100 rupee chappal for 80 rupees. That loss you can never recover, because that 100 rupee chappal will always cost you 100 rupees. And if you are selling it for 80 rupees, you're always losing 20 rupees on it. So that I would call as a bad quality loss, right? And that is something that one should absolutely stem. So that would be sort of my thought process around how to think about losses. But services businesses generally, I think the question was specific to services businesses. Services businesses, and by the way, I'm no expert in services business because I only have built or funded product-oriented businesses, either software or FMCG type products. That said, I would say in services businesses, I don't see a reason why someone should incur losses, because outside of the first, why would you start a services business if you didn't have some sort of view into a client pipeline, etc. Why start it in the first place if you don't even know who's going to buy what you're building?
Absolutely. So a couple of other questions which I wanted to get into, which are interesting. You've already talked about them, but it says, one good question. Actually, let me turn to that. What have you enjoyed the most about starting your own company? Why did you choose that profession? Why did you love it?
I think it's an interesting one. I feel I've always had a serious problem with authority. I think I was always I'm one of two sons of my parents, and I was always the rebel, and I always had a serious problem with authority, and I felt that I would make a really bad employee. In hindsight, like I would be a terrible employee. I would not listen to any manager. So this seemed very natural to me that I'm okay running even a very small company, but as long as I'm my own boss, right? Now, over a period of time, you do realize that even if you have big, which I guess I've had, you will have bosses of some kind or the other. You'll have investors, you'll have boards who you are accountable to. And over a period of time, as you mature, you learn to accommodate some authorities over you. I think the other thing which has really been motivating is just seeing. I can't even imagine. I could have never imagined that there would be there were over 100 million people have bought from us since we started.
Amazing.
I could have never imagined that, a good percentage of I would end up being a part of building something that a good percentage of our country would use at some point or the other, right? Our software business, our SaaS business processes 500 million orders, e-commerce orders a year in India, right? And now we're expanding to Middle East and Southeast Asia and Africa. And I could have never imagined I would be part of building something like that, right? That would power e-commerce for tens of thousands of brands around the world. I think the impact that you start seeing as a result of what you're building in itself is such a big motivator, and it eggs you on to work harder, do more, build a stronger team, build a strong culture. So it's sort of like success begets success in some ways, right? And unless you've seen some, you don't truly understand what the high of success actually is.
The exhilaration
that it creates.
Yes, and the exhilaration for everyone that it creates. So last question I have here is, and it's I'll combine two questions. One was, if you have two products, one is B2B, one is B2C, how do you move both strategies together? And the other one is, in the early days, how do you decide which industry to go for? Or do you try encouraging parallel entrepreneurship in different roles or different areas? You've talked about the need for focus, but I think this is an important dilemma, maybe worth emphasizing again.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good question, and many companies have this dilemma. It's easy for me to sit here and say focus, but the dilemma is real. That said, what I always would do is push myself and my team to really put a plan on a piece of paper for, let's say, people have 3 ideas, right? They don't know whether to go after A, B, C. It's good to sort of drill down deeper to the next level of detail. That what does this look like 1 year out? What does this look like 3 years out? What does this look like 5 years out? What will it take to get there at different points at the different milestones in this particular business? And as you detail out your thinking, sometimes the answer actually becomes quite clear. You realize that the idea B sounded very exciting, but maybe in 2 years it may not be relevant. And you realize that idea C sounds really exciting, but the cost structure is untenable, and it will never be let's say, a profit-making business. And maybe hence idea A, while it has its own challenges, is probably the most, amongst the 3, the most viable in terms of the intersection of size of opportunity, economics, and our ability in terms of having a right to win in it. So I feel that when companies are undecided about A, B, C, let's assume there are 3 things they are contemplating, it's because they just haven't gone into the absolute depth of what will it take to win in each one of these.
Yes.
And when you start thinking about what will it take to win in each one of these, you realize, oh God, just to win in one of them is going to take all our, blood, sweat, tears, soul, everything. Let's leave the other 2.
Yes. Yeah. Well said, Kunal. Well said. Wonderful. Look, we could go on forever. I know you probably have to go, but we had the session for an hour, and it's 1:01 at this point in time. Really love the thoughts. We would love to have you on stage at an event we hope to do in November. We'd love to have you come and talk to some of our finest entrepreneurs in Punjab. And, a part of our aspirational dreams is to make Punjab great. Bring back its former glory. It is a fabulous state, fabulous people, fabulous entrepreneurs, and bring back its glory. So I am overjoyed that people like you are willing to give us some of your time to make that happen. I heard a great quote from our new chief minister there, Bhagwant Mann. He was quoting Abdul Kalam, which was very nicely done. which I think relates so much to what you're saying is, and he said dreams, you know, the true dreams are not those that come to you at night, but those that don't let you sleep at night, you know, because they keep you so passionate and so committed and so convinced. We can't cover all the questions. The audience, thank you very much for being here. I think it's a marvelous, marvelous discussion. Supriya, Somveer, the IMPunjab team, thank you as well. And please send questions to IMPunjab and we'll relay them forward to Kunal for further answers, or for me if you have them. Kunal, thank you a million times.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it and it was an honor being here.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Pramod.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.